Hi everyone, in this video we're going to go through multiplying and dividing algebraic terms. Okay, so I did say in the previous video when you're multiplying we don't tend to write with the multiply sign, so let me just get my pen ready and my highlighter. It's highlighting green. Be consistent. Okay, so 12ABC, there's like an invisible multiplication sign in between. So that means 12 times A times B times C. So kind of think about it if you went to the shops and you wanted to get, 3 donuts. You don't say, can I please have 3 times donuts? You just say 3 donuts. So we just say 12A, B, C, but it does mean we want 3 lots of A, B, and C. When multiplying, the order is not important. So, and I touched on this in the previous video. So 2 times A times 4 times B is the same as 2 times 4 times A times B. Now we do tend to write the coefficient first, so that is the number first, and then the pronumerals we tend to put in alphabetical order. There is nothing wrong with not having it in that specific order, but it's just neater. It's nicer mathematics. And it also helps if you're looking at like terms. If they're in alphabetical order, you can compare them a bit easier. And also when you're multiplying and dividing, you can see where everything is, especially if you've got quite a few pronumerals. All right, so x squared means x times x. So we did that in the previous video. X cubed means x times x times x. And if we had x to the power of 4, it would be x times x times x times x, and so on. And when you're dividing, cancel any common factors. So when I teach dividing algebraic expressions, we look at the coefficients first. So you can just see here underneath there's a 15 and there's a 20. So you'd simplify that fraction first before you deal with the pronumeral part. So 15 over 20, you look for the highest common factor. So 5 goes into both. So that's why you end up with the 3 and the 4. And then remember with fractions, let me just change my pen. If we had 2 divided by 2, that is equal to 1. So it's the same applies with algebra. If you had x over x, it's equal to 1. Or in this case, we've got y on the top and y on the bottom. That is equal to 1. So you can see why the two y's cancel each other out. And then you're just left with the x and the z, x on top and z on the bottom. All right, so we've got a few more questions here than the previous video. So let me just get set up. All right, so the first one, remember that they don't have to be like terms for you to multiply. So we've got 5a times 3bc times 2d. So I would always do the coefficients first. So we've got 5 times 3 times 2, and then multiply your coefficients. Sorry, not your coefficients, your pronumerals. So, and I'm not going to put a multiply sign in between. So I've got A, B, C, D. Now, the reason why I did put a multiplication sign in between the 5, the 3, and the 2 is because if I didn't, it would look like the number 532, when in fact we want to actually multiply them. So 5 times 3 is 15, times 2 is 30. And now I can get rid of the multiply signs. Okay, so 30, lots of A, B, C, D. All right, let's do the second question. All right, so we've got 2A times B times 3 times C. So let's do the coefficients first. Now the number in front of the B is 1. If you want to write that, you can. Won't make any difference because multiplying something by 1, it stays the same. So 2 times 1 times 3. And then our pronumeral parts, we've got A, B, C, D again. All right, so 2 times 1 is 2, times 3 is 6. So we've got 6A, B, C, D. All right, let's move on to question B, part I. So we've got coefficient 7 times 2, and then we've got x times x. Remember, that's going to make that x squared, and then y, z. All right, so remember, and I might highlight this, when you've got two pronumerals or even two numbers, what that becomes is x squared in this case. All right, let me get my pen back. So 7 times 2 is 14. And then we've got x squared y z. All right, part 2. All right, so we've got 3 times 11. Now, you don't have to do that. If you want to do it in your head, that's probably going to save you a step. And then we've got x, only one x. Then I'm going to put in alphabetical order, so I'm going to put the y next. And then we've got z times z, so z squared. All right, and make sure you write neatly. Okay, so your x's should be cursive, not like that, okay, because one looks like an x and one looks like a multiply sign. Also, if you're writing z's, just try to keep it flat, okay, so it doesn't look like a 2. And if you're squaring it, just make sure you clearly have that 2 up the top, that it's not something like that, because that just looks like z2 instead of z squared. All right, so let's move on to some division. All right, question C, part I. All right, so I'm going to rewrite this. So we've got 15 AC over 25 AB. All right, so look at your coefficients first. So we're not going to worry about the letters. We're just going to worry about the 15 and the 25. So the highest common factor for 15 and 25 is 5. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. Not both sides, sorry. Both the top and the bottom by 5. So I'm just simplifying the fraction. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay, so 15 over 25 simplifies to 3/5. Now let's look at the pronumeral part and see if there's anything that we can cross out. So I've got an A on the top and an A on the bottom. So remember what I said before, when your numerator is the same as your denominator, it's equal to 1. Okay, so, and we don't need to put the 1 over 1 because we're multiplying here, and multiplying by 1 keeps it the same. And we've got a C on the top and the B on the bottom, so they just stay where they are. Okay, so 3C over 5B. All right, let's do the second part of question C. Okay, so we've got 4BC over 14AC. All right, so looking for the highest common factor. So the number that goes into both 4 and 14 is 2. So to simplify, I'm going to divide both by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. So 4 over 14 simplifies to 2 over 7. And looking at my pronumerals, I've got a C on the top and a C on the bottom, and then I'm just left with a B on the top and an A on the bottom. So 2B over 7A. Now there's a bit of a gap in between there, but that's okay. All right, let's move on to question D. All right, so part 1. So 12x squared y and 8xz. Just want to make sure I've written that correctly. Okay, so again, looking at your pronumeral part, your coefficients, and looking for the highest common factor. So what number goes into both 12 and 8? Okay, 2 goes into it, but that's not your highest common factor. Your highest common factor is actually 4. So let's divide both by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. And then 8 divided by 4 is 2. So we're going to have 3 over 2. All right, on top we've got x squared. So remember, x squared is the same as x times x. This is a little bit trickier. I can only cancel out one of my x's. Okay, so this x, and I'm going to, because I've replaced that x squared with x times x. So this x cancels out with only one x. So I'm left with one x on the top. All right, so I've rewritten that x squared as xx, and I can only cancel out one x. Okay, so I'm left with one x on the top, and y and z. All right, let's have another go. Do part 2. Let me just scroll up. All right, I've got 40xy squared over 25yz. All right, so looking for the highest common factor. So what number goes into both 40 and 25? So it's going to be 5. So we divide both by 5 just to simplify it. All right, so 40 divided by 5 is 8, and 25 divided by 5 is 5. Now I've got an x on the top and no x on the bottom, so the x can stay there. The y squared, I'm going to rewrite that as yy. Okay, just so I can see what I need to cancel out. So we've got a y here, cancels out with one of those y's, so I'm still left with one y on the top, and then a z on the bottom. All right, so moving along to the second one. So what I'm going to do is just pause now and let you have a go at doing them. So you can pause as well and then check your answers. If you want to, just press play again and see how you're going and pause. All right, but I'm not going to go through them until the end. So I'm going to write them all, and then any tricky ones I'll go through. And then over the next page, we have some division. Okay, so they do get a little bit trickier. All right, so just make sure if there's any you don't understand after watching this video that you do ask for help. All right, so hopefully you had a go at doing some of them or maybe all of them on your own. So here are all the answers if you want to pause and check how you went. With the multiplication, there weren't many tricky ones. Let's have a look though, maybe a few. I can remember which ones were the tricky ones. There were a few negative numbers. So if we look at L, all right, we've got negative 3 times negative 2, our coefficients. So negative times a negative actually gives you a positive. All right, so just remember that. You're multiplying negative numbers. What did we, it's another tricky one. Maybe here, the x squared y, the x and the y. So for question K, you can see I've done the 3 times 2 times 4, which is 24. And then we've got x squared times x, which gives you x cubed. And then we've got y times y, gives you y squared. I don't think there were too many other tricky ones there. The division, though, was a lot harder. So I might just leave that there for you to just quickly check. All right, so there are a few divisions in there. Remember, when you're dividing a negative by a negative, it does become a positive. So if we have a look maybe at K, which is quite tricky as well. All right, so we've got a negative divided by a negative. You can cancel them out straight away. So you can see that as 21p over 3p. But your p's cancel out as well, and then you're just left with 21 divided by 3, which is 7. All right, so probably one that maybe seemed a little bit trickier, but when you look at it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see. With h and j, notice how the negative is in the denominator. So we've got negative 18y and negative 3q. Now, there's nothing wrong with having it in the denominator, but we do tend to write either the negative on the numerator on the top or on the outside of the fraction. So you can just see how I've changed the negative sign and just put it up the top. All right, so just, you know, it's better mathematics to put it on the top or to the side of the fraction. What else was tricky? I think just knowing fractions, and we have just finished fractions, so hopefully you're able to find the highest common factor, cancelling out where possible. So we did have a few where we had to cancel out. So just remember something like I. All right, if it helps, you can rewrite it as negative 4a, so a squared, over 8ab. So those two a's cancel out and you're still left with one a on there. And then obviously negative 4 on 8 becomes negative 1 on 2. So that's how we get negative a on 2b. All right, so if you did have trouble with any of them, please make sure you ask. But when you're ready, do the math space task number 2, please. Bye.